The first time I saw somebody standing in that graveyard, I thought it was my father. That's the part that still messes with me. Because my dad had been dead for almost 8 months when it happened, and I know how insane that sounds. I'm aware of it every time I tell this story, but if I'm being honest, that's the reason I avoided talking about this publicly for years. People hear one sentence like that and immediately decide you imagined everything else too. Maybe I did. I don't know anymore. But I'll tell you exactly how it happened. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania surrounded by woods. Real, rural area. Most roads didn't even have streetlights once you got outside town limits. Behind our neighborhood, there was an abandoned graveyard hidden deep in the trees. Everybody knew it was there. Kids talked about it constantly. Adults avoided talking about it completely, which honestly made it worse. Because when adults in a small town refuse to discuss something, you start realizing there's usually a reason. The graveyard was old. Older than the town itself, according to some people. Half the gravestones were cracked or sinking into the ground. Some had names scratched away completely. Nobody maintained it anymore. No church, no visitors, nothing. And for some reason, people in town absolutely refused to go near it after dark. When I was younger, I thought it was just superstition. Then my father died, heart attack. Completely unexpected. After that, things in our house felt wrong all the time. My mom barely slept. I couldn't sleep either. Every little noise at night started feeling bigger than it should. That summer, I started walking at night just to get out of the house sometimes. One evening, my friend Tyler came with me. We cut through the woods behind my neighborhood like we'd done 100 times before. The graveyard path was the fastest route toward the creek area outside town. At first, everything felt normal. Then Tyler suddenly stopped walking. I remember getting annoyed because I almost walked into him. He didn't answer right away. He was staring toward the trees ahead of us. And then he asked, "Do you hear that?" At first I thought he meant footsteps. But that wasn't it. It was the opposite. There was no sound at all. No insects, no leaves moving, no wind, nothing. And once I noticed it too, I felt cold immediately. Not physically cold, that heavy kind of fear where your stomach suddenly tightens before your brain even understands why. Tyler whispered, "Let's not go through there tonight." I remember laughing nervously and saying something like, "What, are you scared of graves now?" But honestly, I didn't want to keep walking either. Then we saw the light. Small yellow light moving slowly between the gravestones. At first I thought it was somebody carrying a flashlight. But the movement felt wrong immediately. Too smooth. Like it wasn't walking over uneven ground the way a person would. We stood there watching it for maybe 10 seconds. Then it disappeared completely behind one of the larger graves. A few seconds later, it appeared again farther back in the cemetery. Too far. No way somebody moved that quickly without us seeing them cross. That's when Tyler grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt, and quietly said, "There's someone standing there." Near the middle of the graveyard, between the broken headstones, there was a person-shaped figure, completely still, facing directly toward us. I couldn't see the face clearly, but I could tell it was tall, broad shoulders, standing with hands at its sides, and for some reason, my brain instantly recognized the posture. I remember my chest tightening immediately, because it looked exactly like the way my father used to stand. Same posture, same slight tilt forward, even from that distance. Something about it felt familiar enough to make me feel sick. Tyler whispered, "Do you know him?" I couldn't answer. The figure didn't move, didn't react, just stood there facing us from between the graves, and then the light appeared again. Except this time, it wasn't moving through the cemetery anymore. It was behind the figure, getting closer to it. That's when we heard something else. A sound deeper in the woods behind the graveyard. Not footsteps. Dragging. Like something heavy being pulled slowly across wet ground. Tyler immediately backed away. And honestly, that broke whatever frozen feeling I had. We turned and started walking fast back toward the trail. Then, behind us, we heard metal move. Loud. Like the old cemetery gate being forced open. That's when we started running. But the worst part happened after we got home. Because later that night, somebody knocked on our front door. and when my mother looked through the window, she thought it was my father standing outside. The knocking happened a little after 1 a.m. I remember the exact time because my mother looked at the clock right before she froze near the front window. At first I thought she was scared because somebody random was outside that late. Then I saw her face. I've never seen someone lose color that fast before. She stepped backwards slowly without taking her eyes off the door, and quietly said, "That's your father." I remember my entire body locking up. Not fear at first. More like confusion so strong your brain refuses to process the words correctly. Because my father was dead, I walked toward the window anyway, and I swear to God, for 1 second, I thought she was right. There was a man standing near the porch, tall, broad shoulders, wearing what looked like my father's old dark work jacket, but something about him was wrong. He wasn't moving naturally, just standing there perfectly still under the porch light. Then came another knock. 3 slow hits against the door. Not aggressive, almost patient. My mother started crying immediately. That's when I got close enough to look properly through the side window. And the second I did, the figure moved slightly, not away from the house, closer, into the light. I still can't fully explain what I saw, because part of it looked exactly like my father, but another part didn't. The face looked pale, too pale, and the eyes looked strange somehow, like they were reflecting light wrong. Then the porch light flickered once, and the figure was suddenly gone. Not walking away, gone. I ran outside immediately after that. Nothing there. No footsteps, no car, no sound. Just cold air and darkness near the tree line behind our house. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The next morning, Tyler came over before I even texted him. And the first thing he asked was, "Did somebody come to your house last night?" That immediately made my stomach drop, because I hadn't told anyone. Then he said he barely slept after what happened at the graveyard. Around 1 a.m., he looked outside his bedroom window and saw someone standing near the woods across from his house, watching his yard. Tall figure, not moving, same description, same posture. That's when things stopped feeling like coincidence. Over the next week, weird things started happening around town. People's dogs barking toward the woods at night. Lights seen moving near the cemetery again. One older guy claimed he saw someone standing between graves during the rain. Nobody openly discussed it, but you could feel people avoiding that side of town after dark. Then Tyler found something, and honestly, I wish he hadn't. About 4 days later, he went back near the graveyard during daytime, not inside, just near the fence. That's when he noticed fresh mud around one of the older graves, near the center. Not dug up exactly, more like disturbed, and there were footprints around it. Bare footprints. That's the detail that bothered him most, because the mud was cold and wet from overnight rain. But the prints looked fresh, like someone had been standing there recently with no shoes on. Tyler took pictures. I saw them myself, and in one of the photos, there was something in the background between the trees. At first I thought it was a shadow. Then I realized it looked like somebody standing there, watching him. Tyler stopped joking about the graveyard after that. Actually, neither of us did. Because once we zoomed into that photo, things started feeling genuinely wrong. The figure in the background wasn't clear enough to identify properly, but you could tell it was facing directly toward the camera, standing completely still between the trees. And the weirdest part, neither of us remembered anybody being there when he took the photo. Tyler kept saying, "I would have noticed someone standing there," and honestly, he should have. The woods behind that cemetery weren't thick enough to completely hide a person during daylight, but there it was in the picture, watching. A couple nights later, Tyler called me around midnight, sounding terrified, not nervous. Terrified. He said somebody was outside his house again. I drove there immediately, and when I arrived, every light inside his house was on. Tyler wouldn't even open the door fully at first. He kept looking past me toward the street. Then he finally told me what happened. He heard movement outside his bedroom window around 11:40 p.m. At first he thought it was branches moving. Then he heard breathing, close, like someone standing directly outside the screen. When he looked out, He saw a face, partially visible beside the window frame. Pale skin, dark eyes, not blinking, just staring inside. He turned on the outside floodlight immediately, and the face disappeared. But he said he heard footsteps afterward, moving slowly toward the woods, not running, walking, like whoever it was wasn't scared of being seen. That night was the first time we seriously considered telling somebody. But who do you even tell? Police. And say what? There's somebody near the abandoned graveyard who maybe looks like my dead father. Nobody would take that seriously. Then things escalated again. Because the following morning, Tyler's dog was gone. The chain in the backyard was broken, and there were muddy footprints leading toward the woods. Bare footprints, same as before. I know this sounds stupid now, but we decided to go back to the graveyard. Not at night this time, late afternoon. We told ourselves if somebody was actually hiding out there, we'd finally figure it out. That confidence disappeared the second we reached the cemetery, because the atmosphere felt wrong immediately. Too quiet again. Same unnatural silence as before, and this time, there was a smell. Wet dirt mixed with something rotten underneath it. Tyler pointed toward the middle section of the graveyard, almost immediately. One of the graves had collapsed inward slightly, fresh dirt around the edges, and the ground looked disturbed recently. That's when we heard movement behind us, not loud. Just slow footsteps somewhere deeper in the woods. We both turned immediately, nothing there. But the footsteps stopped the exact second we stopped moving. That's what scared me most. It felt intentional, like something was pacing us just outside visibility. Then Tyler noticed something near one of the older gravestones. A photograph, half buried in mud. He picked it up, and I swear my stomach dropped instantly. It was an old picture of my father, one I had never seen before, standing in front of the same graveyard, much younger. And on the back of the photo, written in faded pen, were the words, "Somebody always comes back." That's when we heard the dragging sound again, closer this time, from inside the trees. And then Tyler suddenly whispered, "Don't move." About 20 feet away between the woods, somebody was standing there watching us. Tall figure, dark jacket, completely still. And even from that distance, I recognized the posture immediately. We ran. I don't even remember deciding to. One second we were staring into the trees. The next we were sprinting back toward town. And the entire time, I could hear movement behind us. Not fast, not chasing exactly, just following. Slow enough to stay close. We never told anyone about the photograph. Not even my mother. Tyler wanted to burn it immediately, but I kept it. I don't know why. Maybe because part of me needed proof that something happened out there. A few weeks later, Tyler's family moved away unexpectedly. He barely talked to me after that. And when he did, he refused to mention the graveyard at all. Years passed, I left town to eventually, but here's the part that still bothers me. About 3 years ago, I went back, daytime, just to prove to myself it was all childhood fear mixed with grief after losing my father. The graveyard was still there, smaller than I remembered, older, falling apart, but near the center. I found the same grave with disturbed dirt, and beside it, fresh barefoot footprints in the mud, leading into the woods. Not away from them. Into them, I left immediately after that, and I haven't gone back since. But sometimes late at night, I still think about one thing. That photo of my father standing near the graveyard. Because when I finally checked the date printed on the back, it was taken 6 years after he died.